Hi, I'm Helen Nunn. I'm an advisor and director in SIAM and service management, currently working with a global service provider. I've been a SIAM community champion for a number of years now and was a reviewer of the SIAM Skills Compendium we're going to be exploring today. I'm delighted to be your host and excited to be joined by lead authors Simone J. Moore and Suzanne Galletly. Welcome both. Simone, firstly, if I can come to you, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I am a SIAM community member, and my work as a consultant, trainer, and practitioner brings together service integration and also with emotional agility and with digital strategy. As an author and contributor across various industry frameworks, I use my SASSy and relationship nexus lens for guidance alongside machine humanity and empathy to help us shape ethical, human-centered capability for Industry 5.0, because I really want to make sure that we can help leaders navigate complexity and make authentic, sustainable decisions.
Wow, Suzanne. And if you want to follow that, what about yourself?
I'm Suzanne Galletly. I'm Digital Skills Director at Exin. Exin is the partner of Scopusm for the SIAM exams and certification. I'm also part of the Scopusm Leadership Council and the ITSMF International Board of Directors, and I helped found the SIAM community here in the Netherlands. So you could say that both skills and SIAM are part of my DNA.
Thanks, ladies. It's clear you're both very strong in the industry and a steady force in shaping SIAM. If I can come back to you, Simone, as the original lead author of this compendium, could you share the primary purpose behind its initial creation?
Sure. At its heart, the Skills Compendium is about bridging the gap between theory and practice. It's been about enabling capability and fostering the lifelong learning, as well as creating that resilient service ecosystem that can adapt and evolve, so that when complexity hits, as it will inevitably do, people have the skills, confidence, and the clarity to make that work. It's more than an addition to the SIAM body of knowledge. It reflects how service integration itself is changing and becoming more human-centered, collaborative, and strategic.
So why then do you think the topic's important, Simone?
The topic, it's a recalibration of capability. Skills aren't static, especially in that, this current era of AI, automation, and Industry 5.0. They move between coordination and conscious capability. We need to navigate that chaos that's in the complexity and I guess the internal patterns within our minds and our behaviours, and I guess what I call the subtle crimes of convenience from cognitive overload. So service integration really enables people because the skills we develop shape not just the maturity and sustainability of our ecosystem, but it also helps shape the humanity that's within them and how we evolve.
And Suzanne, what are your thoughts on its importance?
So, there's always a lot of focus on technology, isn't there? And particularly in this era of AI, there's a lot of focus on that. And ITSM has always been very, traditionally very focused on process as well. But if we think about that, triangle of people, process, technology, it's actually people that make the difference. And if we look at, for example, research from, the World Economic Forum, amongst others, they show that actually the number one barrier to organizational transformation that organizations are experiencing, it's not regulatory barriers or technology or anything, it's lack of the right skills. So, we've got this big digital skills gap, we're aware of it, but organizations often don't know where to start with it. They often don't have a view on their current capability. They don't know how to view skills, where they can start, which tools and frameworks are available, and particularly if that needs to be quite specific for, SIAM roles and competencies. So it's about giving them a starting point, giving them a reference, and giving them the right tools to be able to build on further.
I've had similar experiences, Suzanne, when we've been trying to fill key SIAM roles, including recognising which skills are already in-house. So rather than go out to the market, we can build upon and leverage those. You've mentioned about the digital skills gap. What impact is the growth of technologies like AI likely to have on SIAM roles, do you think?
So I think it'll have a big impact, but I think there's a lot of opportunity as well for SIAM type roles. The relationship is two-way, which I think is interesting. There's a lot of focus on how AI can support a SIAM model with predictive monitoring or use of AI agents for automating certain parts of the model, etc. But I also think that SIAM can really help with the governance of AI initiatives, because AI is often very messy the way it's done right now, whereas you need to make sure, if you've got strong governance, you can make sure it's linked to business strategy, that you're considering any compliance considerations, especially where third parties are involved. So I also think SIAM can support AI on the governance side very strongly. We see AI is shaping a lot the way that roles are developing and the different skills needs, but we also see quite a lot of disillusionment with AI as the ROI doesn't always come to fruition. And I think that this will lead a lot more to an adjusted approach with human and machine much more collaborating together. And that means that SIAM professionals, like any other professionals as well, they will need to sort of rethink their roles in terms of how they are interacting with technology to unlock value. And I think SIAM is very well positioned to do that, because I think that roles will move from a sort of process focus to a more orchestration focus. And SIAM is very much about orchestration. You can automate a lot of stuff on the process side, but you still need an orchestrator to bring it all together. And that's where SIAM can be extremely strong. And I also think that SIAM can act as a great bridge, if you like, between, for want of a better word, old world and new world. SIAM has all those things that are familiar to us, a process approach that we all know from ITSM sort of traditional style, but it's also got all those new ways of working around customer centricity and collaboration and no blame culture. So I think SIAM is very well placed, but everybody will have to adapt, of course, with different skills needed in the interaction with technology.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I agree on the orchestration piece as well. So Simone, what do you feel about the impact? What do you feel it'll be?
I'll lead off what Suzanne has already said, because there's some very strong points in there that people do need to pay attention to. For example, the governance. Current governance does not necessarily mean you can govern AI well. So that definitely needs to be addressed. And that includes the way in which we look at the skill sets, the way we look at the capability across the board. And AI is reshaping SIAM roles beyond automation. That orchestration is definitely a key facet. So if I think about the interactions that we have, there's, people to tech, so how people are interacting with the technology itself, and also to people to process, so how we go about doing our work, which of course is then directly related to what capabilities that we're going to need. And then there's people to people, and that in itself is also necessary. So you've got three core interactions there that SIAM helps bring together. And I think through empathy, which is the AI empathy combination, and emotional agility, I think SIAM professionals can really ensure that AI supports humans rather than the other way around. And that's where we need to look at cognitive diversity and cognitive nutrition. And those things are showing up now as well because of the growth of AI, because we need to continually be feeding our minds with curiosity and skill adaptation. And I really feel that they're essential for guiding those ecosystems successfully through the complexity that exists.
So how is SIAM considered in the job market, do you feel? Suzanne, if you want to take that first, is it seen as a separate profession with its own skill set?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we included some interesting research of David Barrow in the compendium as well, because he took a specific look at this, and he saw that despite the relevance of SIAM, it's sort of rarely designated as a specific job role. So SIAM skills are typically part of larger roles around, IT service management or project management, or, even operations management. And obviously whether SIAM should be, actually a standalone job title will probably depend a lot on an organization's, specific circumstances, its size, complexity, and strategic priorities. On the one hand, giving it a standalone job can make sure that you've got accountability and there's enough focus on what you want to achieve with your integration objectives. But on the other hand, particularly within smaller organizations, it can sometimes make sense to incorporate those, combine roles together. So there's no one size fits all there. But what I think we do see very clearly, and this is a very strong positive signal, is that, SIAM is very much maturing as a profession. If you think of those signals that help to sort of, what is a mature profession, it's got its own community, and that community is growing. It's got its own body of knowledge. It's got its own professional certification scheme. And we also see that, the SIAM market is predicted to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 7.42% between now and 2035. So the future's good for SIAM because of the value that it gives in this complex world.
So building on your point about SIAM's growth and professional maturity, myself and Barry Corliss, we've been looking at SIAM competences. So we've been working within the Exon Astrid framework, and we've introduced a further 2 dedicated SIAM particular roles and introduced 13 roles that are there already. So building on your point that it's not always a dedicated role. We've worked during 2025 and 26 on the first phase of shaping this, and we'll be introducing additional roles this year as the year progresses. So as the framework evolves, we'll be integrating into future iterations of the SIAM readiness and maturity assessments as well. So we'll very much be embedding capabilities in a few of the artifacts and frameworks that SIAM aligns to. So we've mentioned the skills gap a number of times. Simone, which challenges do organisations face today in defining and identifying the gap, do you feel?
I think one of the biggest challenges is organizations still trying to define skills in a very static role-based way, when the reality is far more fluid. In complex environments that SIAM deals in, capability isn't just about what people know. It's really the human skills in how they think, how they adapt, and how they collaborate, especially under pressure. And that makes service integration work better in practice when we have those things. There's also a risk of over-indexing on technical skills while underestimating the human capability that actually holds those things together. So the gap isn't always where organizations think it is. It's often hidden in the behaviors and in the mindsets and the ability to navigate things in real time. One of the key areas that people can look at is during the discovery and strategy stage of the SIAM roadmap. You can use one of the models we've included in the compendium is the zone of skills, and that can help you identify the known used, the known unused, along with unknown used and unknown missing. I think you'll find some of the models and the other things we've included in the compendium quite useful to help you do those things.
Thanks, Simone. What about yourself, Suzanne?
So, the reality is that most organizations don't really have an accurate view of their current skills, which, is why it's really important to take a structured approach to, performing a capability assessment. And that can help you obviously identify the skills gaps that you have. We have talked a lot about the skills gap, but also potentially to identify skills that you may have within your organization which are currently being underutilized and could potentially be used in a different way. So that's obviously an opportunity. I think the real risk is, and the capability assessment won't necessarily pick up on this, because that's the skills that you think you have but actually might not have. A capability assessment might be able to pick up on that if you have thought that you have those skills, and then you actually dig in and validate and find out that you don't. But it could be that you designate those as skills you have and when you don't. And that's where the real risk is, because that can lead to all kinds of problems like incidents and compliance breaches, etc. But that's why it's really important to have a structured approach to capability assessment, and to regularly review skills, and also to independently validate them.
I agree. I mean, sometimes people evaluate skills once and then just work on the gap and don't go back and revisit. So, Simone, what are the key skills you feel SIAM professionals need today?
I think there's quite a number, and they're clearly set out in the compendium. And there's quite a few to investigate there, and have a look at how, using a capability assessment, how you might see those matching up to what you currently have. But I'd say key is really about cultivating a diverse and balanced set of skills, so that SIAM professionals can contribute meaningfully across the integration landscape, and to be able to stay adaptable. And that really means lifelong learning. And hopefully that people will have that mind shift out there to realize that it is a continuous cycle when it comes to our capabilities. I think to make sense of complexity, we need both analytical and creative thinking skills, along with a lot of digital curiosity, so we can stay open, engaged with what's emerging. And the human side, of course, leadership, relationship management, and sense making, because ultimately that is how we connect, interpret, and act, making our service integration more successful.
Thanks, Simone. So what do you both see as the next steps? Simone, if I can come back to you first.
I think you'll find that this first release of the compendium and of the SIAM Body of Knowledge is a living framework. It's dynamic and evolving. The next steps are really about engagement and application, how the community uses it to shape career paths, your capability models, and your learning journeys. We'll also explore coming up, SIAM, how it can support governance and ethical integration in AI and automation, and helping the profession evolve with that confidence and impact. I mean, after all, the compendium lives where capability meets consciousness, and that's where the next generation of integrators begin.
And Suzanne, what about yourself?
So, we hope it'll be widely read and considered as a useful resource, because that's obviously the main purpose that we wanted to do with writing this compendium. In some ways, it'll always be evolving. So, we need to keep an eye on how SIAM roles and skills will develop in the coming time, and particularly with that new calibration and balance of human and machine collaboration together, and the impact that has on SIAM roles and skills. But I think, for the moment, it's about giving a starting point, and hopefully this is a useful starting point that the community can pick up to start looking at skills in a bit more of a structured and intentional way, and to further build on that.
Thanks both for your insights and perspectives on key skills and capabilities within SIAM environments. We'd like you, the audience, to continue this conversation with us and tell us how organisations are recalibrating their service models within the new compendiums. You can access the SIAM community and resources through Scopus and website or via the app. Over to you, Simone, now for some parting words.
Thanks, Helen and Suzanne. As we continue this conversation on the future of service integration, I'd like to leave you with one thought. From coordination to conscious capability, this is SIAM's next evolution.